All of these cultural things, important. All of that, that umbrella, important for preservation. But what I think the Council of Regency, the perspective that they've brought to life is Hawaii as a country. And if you have the country, all of that stuff theoretically gets preserved. When you're running your own show, when you are in charge of governance and not someone else, then all of those things get protected on their own, right? The reason we got to protect all of these things, the reason we even have to debate a telescope is because America is trying to, other countries, not even America, 5 other countries, 6 other countries are trying to put a telescope on Mauna Kea, right? When we are in charge of governance, country, all of these other things can be protected, right? Or at least you're in control of driving in what direction those things go. And that's the importance and the significance of the loss of governance, right? The loss of control.
Most groups like us, say Native Americans or Maori, are colonized nations, you might say, whereas Hawaii avoided the fate of colonization by gaining international recognition in 1843, and that creates a different path where colonization is actually not possible. So the term colonization was used very pervasively throughout academia, especially among minorities, indigenous groups, and so Hawaiians kind of carried that on and applied it to our context, but it turned out that that is probably wrong from a technical standpoint, and so we're in this strange situation of being a recognized nation state occupied, but what's really unique is that that occupation was in a sense covered up, and it didn't take much effort to cover it up. It was more of a case of just banking on the ignorance that was already there, and if you don't say anything, people will continue believing things that benefit the status quo. In other words, prolong the occupation, which is kind of what's happened.
The Working Group on Indigenous Populations, and that's what started to address Native rights, give them meaning, right? Give them effect. But it only applied to those indigenous people or tribal people who are within the territory of members of the United Nations. The Hawaiian Kingdom is not a member of the United Nations. Our government was illegally overthrown in 1893, and you need a government to join organizations. We've been occupied since January 17, 1893. So that's why it is historically inaccurate to say we're indigenous people, because we're not in any territory of a member of the United Nations. But the reason why a lot of our people go to the United Nations to express their perceived rights as indigenous people, they're operating on the premise that they're operating within the United States territory, which says this is the 50th state, and now they have rights that are being violated. And those rights are based upon, a lot of it is based on cultural rights, resources, yeah. So you see how we have to be careful how we use the terms? So what you would call people here under international law, irrespective of whether they're Hawaiian subjects or not, they're called protected persons. And that's a definition that applies to civilians, irrespective of your citizenship, but you're in occupied territory.
We didn't understand the significance of what that meant, right? That's the significance between occupation and colonization, right? Two very, very, and this is the interesting thing, right? They look very similar on the surface, but they're very different, right? And for me, this is where the precision, right? The precision of observation right? You go back to traditional Hawaiian times and they observed everything. A rain that came this direction was different than a rain that came from this direction. A rain that hit your skin this hard, it was had a different name than a rain that hit your skin this hard, right? And owama is different than a veke, right? All the life stages of a fish had names, right? Today it's a fish, right? Back then it was an owama, then it was this, then it was that, then it's a veke, right? You name your fish, they all had that kind of, that attention to detail, right? Today we're a lot less precise with that. And I think that's a good metaphor for the difference in precision between occupation and colonization. Yeah, they both got land, both got people. Yeah, but one's politically different than the other. Not better, different, right? And that acknowledgement of that difference is crucial for Hawaiian history.
I remember the moment when I realized that the political status of Hawaii was one of an occupied state. After Keanu Sai had spoken to my classes, and so he made a good argument that Hawaii's annexation was illegal. Then after the class, we were sitting in the lounge, and I said, "So what is all of this?" Meaning the state government, the state capital, the military, the Department of Education, all of it. And he said, "Occupation." And that was a light bulb. That's all I needed to hear was the word occupation, because I knew what that word meant. And so the word occupation, the occupation is its own status.
I think we need to understand the significance of the country, right? And Umi has a quote that I love in the Larson versus Hawaiian Kingdom video where he talks about, well, you know, this is not about culture, it's not about these things. And if you take that at face value, you get offended by that, right? What do you mean it's not about culture? Everything's about culture. But listen to what he's saying on the second half. It's about the country.
It's not talking about culture, it's not talking about all these other things. It's, if we're going to present Hawaii's existence, its continued existence, and prove to the world that our sovereignty was never diminished, we needed a cornerstone. The Queen laid that for us.
Right? And that country protects culture, protects all of these other things. That's the big umbrella. And we had that umbrella protecting us. And it was, while we were running the country, we were protecting those things. The land was cared for. We wouldn't have a discussion about TMT. The conversation would never even come up if we were in governance, if we were in charge, right? And that's that significance of the Council of Regency bringing the perspective of Hawaii as a country back to the forefront, right? The fact has always been there. Kuykendall wrote the book in 1938. Hawaii is an independent country. We lack the context to put that on. The context provides the significance. Why is it significant that Hawaii was a country, right? Why does it matter? Why should I care? That's what the context provides, the significance. Now we understand the significance. We were in control. Things were protected, right? And that's where I think, you know, I don't want to put words in Umi's mouth, but that's where I think that's what the essence of what Umi was talking about. Hey, it's not about culture. It's about the country, right? You got the country, you protect the culture.
Tamara Polton, a councilwoman from Maui, drafted a letter to President Lasner before the arrest. And she had asked me what are my thoughts on Mauna Kea. And I came at it from an international law standpoint. If you guys get a chance, go get a copy of her letter online, and you're going to read what I wrote, which you now can better understand after you sat in this class. Because at first I think people might be going, what is this guy talking about? It was to President Lasner from the University of Hawaii. So what you can do is Google Tamara Polton, Tamara Polton, Paltin. So if it's an order to allow a group to go up there to commit a crime, that's an unlawful order. and that as an unlawful order, you have every responsibility to stand down and say, until you can prove to me it's not an unlawful order, I got to stand down. Because if I follow through knowing it's an unlawful order, superior orders are not a defense. Under Section 509, defense of superior orders. The fact that the law of war has been violated pursuant to an order of a superior authority, whether military or civil, does not deprive the act in question of its character of a war crime. Nor does it constitute a defense in the trial of an accused individual unless he did not know and could not reasonably have been expected to know what the act ordered was unlawful. So one thing we had in the Army Guard, in the Army, same training, unlawful orders. If there is a maka'i or law enforcement, or somebody who's going to have a sidearm that's going to be carrying out something, and they watch this video on YouTube, this is how you address it, you deal with it.
Options for you guys.